I am many things, but one thing that I do like to be known for is that I give appropriate credit when it's due. And when it comes to the WWE and to their annual Hall of Fame class, there are times where I sit there and say, if I had this much animosity or this much distrust of an individual or this much heat with an individual, I'm not sure I would be so willing to give them a nice payout and, have them be a part of my biggest show of the year. That's just me, though. And for all the things you could say about the WWE, and in particular Vincent Kennedy McMahon, on a negative sense, and a lot of them true, and I think in some cases they won't even deny some of them being the key term. The one thing you cannot deny is that Vince McMahon has a tremendous ability, in my opinion, to put aside bad feelings and do what is best, even if he doesn't necessarily always agree with that. Sometimes. He does have that ability. He does demonstrate that ability. I mean, this is the same guy that once brought in Eric Bischoff to work for him and worked with him for over 3 years. Now just think about that. I know a lot of people look at the WWE in 2014 and the way it's currently constructed, and they're like, oh, you don't listen to the fans with CM Punk and with Daniel Bryan in particular. And I get that and I understand that. And there's definitely an argument to be made about that, and I'll make that argument later this month, that the WWE doesn't listen to your voice and frankly doesn't care about your voice. However, when it comes to the WWE Hall of Fame, I do feel like Vince McMahon puts his personal feelings to the side for the greater good. And I have a great appreciation and respect for that. You know, I always say when it comes to professional wrestling, never say never. And looking at the Hall of Fame class for last year and the fact that, you get the sense that Triple H did a lot of the legwork to get Bruno Sammartino to go into the 2013 WWE Hall of Fame class, that was something, that was a special moment, especially for older fans, but fans in general. I think that was a special moment that says that anything is possible when it comes to the WWE, good and bad. Now, the 2014 Hall of Fame class is what I'm here to talk about today. And what I'm going to do is share with you who I would put in the WWE Hall of Fame this year if I had the deciding vote or I was the only vote, and who I would choose to present them for induction. Now, obviously, I have to be realistic. I could sit there and make an entire Hall of Fame full of guys, a Hall of Fame class it is, full of guys that have waited far too long. The Macho Man Randy Savages, the Owen Harts, the British Bulldogs, the Rick Rudes, the Big Boss Mans, the Bam Bam Bigelows. I could go on and on and on and on. There are a lot of names, and I've left many off the list. But there are a lot of names. I could make an entire class out of that, and people would be like, that's maybe the greatest Hall of Fame class of all time. In my opinion, still, I would say maybe the greatest single WWE Hall of Fame class might have been 2005. It's just from my perspective and my purposes, I suppose. But 2014 so far is shaping up to be a tremendous year, no question about it. You've already got two headliners and two legit headliners and two guys from the era of wrestling that I grew up in, the Hogan era, the era of the 80s and the early 90s, and two guys that have been long denied their proper due. But they're going to get it this year. That's the Ultimate Warrior and Jake the Snake Roberts. Those are two very worthy headliners of any Hall of Fame class, and it feels very appropriate heading into WrestleMania 30 that these are going to be two of the featured attractions for the Saturday night Hall of Fame event. It really does. And for an old fan like me, it's going to be really nice to see. The thought of the Ultimate Warrior, after so many years of being at odds with the company, and in particular Vincent K. McMahon, being welcomed back into the family, even if it's kind of at arm's length a little bit, to me, that's a tremendous thing. For all of the propaganda that's been put out that's been anti-Warrior over the years, I think it's important for the business and for Vince and the company and for Warrior himself to come full circle so that way his accomplishments can be recognized, because there are accomplishments. There are some great and tremendous accomplishments. And he was a big-time star for a period of time. And like I said, I would argue one of those individuals that had that rare distinction of, for a period of time, being more over than Hulk Hogan, and that was during the Hulkamania era. And that's not something you could say about just anyone. And then you look at Jake the Snake Roberts, and again, an individual who's represented a lot of good to a lot of wrestling fans over the years. Unfortunately, has represented both to us and to himself at times a lot of bad and a lot of negative. But I feel like we've got a really good chance at a full circle kind of redemption story with Jake the Snake Roberts, righting himself and working hard to work on his demons, overcome those demons, and taking his rightful place in the WWE Hall of Fame. I can't wait till the day that they actually do finally construct a physical Hall of Fame, because I'd love to go see a display of Ultimate Warrior and Jake the Snake Roberts. That would be awesome to me. Have a full size replica of Damien, or have some of Warrior's old in ring trunks and boots and the freaking tresses and all. It would just be awesome. It's absolutely awesome. Now, as far as who I would have induct those two, I would have had somebody induct the Ultimate Warrior, but apparently he wanted to pick up his ball and go home. I kind of hope deep down inside that things get right, because I do feel that CM Punk would be an appropriate individual to present the Ultimate Warrior for induction. I do. He's obviously somebody that understands that Warrior was a big time deal back in the day. He grew up watching him, understands that Warrior had huge star power, became a household name to some degree, and kind of similar to CM Punk in the thing of looking after himself, looking out for himself, understanding that it's a business and it's about getting yourself paid, made, and laid. There's nothing wrong with that. And they're kind of similar in the sense that they'll say whatever's on their mind, whether anybody agrees with it or not. But as a safe fallback, I think another person you have to go with, it's got to be Hogan. Whether Warrior wants it to be that way, whether Hogan wants it to be that way, it's got to be Hogan. A nice little, again, full circle type of deal. Even with all the crap that Warrior was talking about Hogan, you put that stuff to the side, because ultimately this is a weekend to celebrate your accomplishments, and it's a chance to give back to the fans and have the fans show you their appreciation for you. And Jake the Snake Roberts, I think DDP's got to be the logical presenter at this point. With DDP Yoga and Diamond Dallas Page taking in Jake the Snake Roberts, you can argue it probably saved his life, and it probably did. They're obviously great friends. I'm sure DDP will have a lot of great stories about him throughout his career, how Jake helped him in the business, and so on and so forth. Be a very, very appropriate presenter. Now, other inductees for the 2014 WWE Hall of Fame class. Again, if I had the vote, I would look at, for the tag team or the faction, I would go with the Fabulous Freebirds. This is an honor and distinction that's long overdue. I think sometimes it's because Vince is always wanting to rib Michael P.S. Hayes. A lot of people maybe don't like Michael P.S. Hayes, but there is no doubt he's one of the great mouthpieces in professional wrestling history, and the Fabulous Freebirds were a revolutionary, industry-changing tag team during their time. I would have them be presented for induction by probably Kevin Von Erich. I mean, with the Freebirds and the Von Erichs, when you think of the Freebirds, more often than not, you think of the Von Erich family. Why not have the surviving member of the Von Erich family induct them? That's when WCCW was at its highest power. If somebody like the Junkyard Dog was still with us, I would argue for him to present the Freebirds. You're down there in New Orleans, you're down there in the old Mid-South territory. Never forget the Freebirds incited riots, blinding JYD. But they definitely belong. They definitely deserve a place, and it's an honor that's well overdue. As far as a diva to go in, it's got to be Lita to me. That's the one that stands out the most, and the inductor, it can only be one individual. And no, it's not AJ Lee, knuckleheads. It's got to be Trish Stratus, beyond question. I mean, again, not only would this be a great class in terms of name and star power, but your presenters would be very, very big. I mean, you're talking about Hulk Hogan and DDP and Trish Stratus. Those are some big name presenters, and you go on. For the manager, it's got to be Paul Bearer. One of the great tragedies is that Paul Bearer wasn't inducted while he was still alive. And, this is one of these things here where there's only one individual ultimately that can induct him. There's only one individual that can do it for it to feel right, and that's got to be The Undertaker. You can throw Kane in there, and that's fine with me too. But you got to have Undertaker be the one to present Paul Bearer, and you've got to put Paul Bearer in. There's just no way you can't. Percy Pringle, Paul Bearer, whatever you want to call him. The bottom line is, when it comes to managers, he had a lot of impact on the business over the years and deserves this spot. As far as like the old school or legend type of individual, I can make a great huge argument for a Lou Thez. I'm sure if it was presented right and Briscoe, talked to Lou's widow Charlie and explained the importance of introducing a whole new generation of fans to the greatness of Lou, he would be she would be willing to have him inducted. But here in this case, since Lou's no longer with us, I'll focus on somebody who is still with us that I feel deserves the honor, and that's Danny Hodge. And to me, the most logical person to induct him, Briscoe, would be incredibly logical. But again, a chance to maybe mend some fences. It's got to be good old JR, Jim Ross, another fellow Oklahoman. Danny Hodge, if you don't know, former junior heavyweight champion multiple times, wrestled in the Mid-South Territory under Bill Watts. In fact, I still don't think he likes Bill Watts very much. However, Danny Hodge, this is a legit guy. He's the only amateur to ever grace the cover of Sports Illustrated. That's a pretty big deal. And it would be cool at Hall of Fame week. And I've had the pleasure of meeting Danny Hodge a couple of times. A wonderful man, a sweet man, a nice man, a funny man. It'd be really cool at the Hall of Fame weekend to see him at 80 plus years of age crush an apple with his hand. Look it up if you've never seen it before. It's quite awesome. I would induct Kamala. I'd have the Brooklyn Brawler present him for induction, because Brooklyn Brawler used to fill the role of Kimchi sometimes. Kamala's a guy that did some good in the years he was in the business, was a big draw in several different territories. Unfortunately, life has kind of went south for him in recent years. He's had a lot of health issues, whatever. I feel like Kamala deserves a moment in the sun. I feel like Kamala deserves to get a decent payout here, a way for the wrestling business to give back to a man that gave a lot to the business for so many years and really gave his body to the business. Give him a nice payout. Give him his moment in the sun. Maybe this is a chance to do some Kamala merchandise so that way he can have some continual residual income. I know if they did a bunch of Kamala figures, I'd buy a bunch of them personally. WWE employee that I put in here. This is one of these things that people say, who? But you know who, Jim Johnston. Since 1985, he's been primarily responsible for the majority of the theme music that you hear in WWF and WWE. There are so many great theme songs over the years. Jim Johnston created pretty much all of them when it comes to that company. When you think of employees in the WWE that deserve a moment in the sun, a guy behind the scenes that you don't really see a lot, that you don't hear a lot about, that doesn't get a lot of recognition, Jim Johnston to me deserves that. You could have Stephanie present him. I wouldn't go maybe with Vince because I feel like Vince should be the rare few select in terms of who he presents. But I think Stephanie McMahon would be an appropriate person to induct Jim Johnston. And I think a lot of wrestling fans, especially those on the internet that pay attention to this type of stuff more, understand just how significant his impact has been on the business. For the celebrity, I'm going to go old school, and I'm going to go with Mr. T. And I'd have Roddy Piper induct him. You can sit there and say, Roddy's not going to do it. You put enough money there, he'll do it. And I can't blame him. Hold out for more money, brother. Just when you think you've got all the answers, I change the questions. But without Mr. T, there might not be a WrestleMania to this day. You could have the WWE and people involved with the WWE over the years try to dismiss him and minimize his impact and his role in the company. But Mr. T in the mid-'80s was hot. He was white hot. The A-Team was on fire. Mr. T was it. And to have a star, the caliber and the power of Mr. T, it was perfectly fit in the mid-'80s. He was the '80s as much as any individual. And to have him aligned with Hulk Hogan and then him be involved at WrestleMania 1 and WrestleMania 2, he's a big signature reason why WrestleMania was a huge success. There's no question about it. And it's been long overdue for him to be inducted into the celebrity wing of the WWE Hall of Fame. And the last one for me is kind of a personal one, and that is wonderful Willie Apter, Bill Apter. For so many years, fans like myself and fans older than me and fans a little younger than me grew up on the, as they were called by Meltzer, the Apter mags, the kayfabe mags, the PWIs of the world, and etc. When you look at Bill Apter and his accomplishments, and when you look at Bill Apter and his impact on the business, you still feel it to this day. Multiple generations of wrestling fans kept up during the territorial days, especially, but even afterwards, they kept up with the business and found out about individuals because of the work that Bill Apter did. And he, even at almost 70 years of age, he's still going strong. He still loves the business. He's the one that got Andy Kaufman in contact with Jerry the King Lawler, so Jerry Lawler could bring him into Memphis after Bill Apter called Vince Sr., and Vince Sr. didn't want anything to do with Andy Kaufman. There are so many things that Bill Apter's done over the years to help contribute to the business. And I realize that people don't view him necessarily as a WWE employee per se, or somebody that did this or did that. But if you're a true wrestling fan, how could you really argue against Bill Apter going into the WWE Hall of Fame? For me, somebody just kind of this amateur ass wrestling journalist, so to speak, and even the ones that do it professionally for a living. Bill Apter to me sets a standard that we could all strive to reach and that we could all, only hope to achieve in our lifetimes and through our body of work. And he's a man to me that is almost universally respected by fans and people inside of the business. And that's something that is very rare to find. It really, really is. And I think it would be an honor that is well deserved, and it would be an honor that he would feel humbled by. And he would really bring some great levity to it. You could have Jerry the King Lawler induct him, which is what I think you should do. You could maybe even have the living legend Bruno Sammartino do it if he wanted to do it. But I'd probably go with Lawler. But the bottom line is, these are the people that I would choose if I had the choice, being realistic, that I would put into the 2014 WWE Hall of Fame class. Let me know if you have anybody that you think I should take out or anybody that I should add to replace these individuals. A great Hall of Fame class. I'm really looking forward to the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. It's one of these things that really has become a big part of WrestleMania to me. And some years, you look forward to the announcement of the Hall of Fame inductees and being able to watch later their induction speeches than the actual show itself. It's become its own kind of monster in a way, and I'm glad the WWE realized it and has capitalized on it.